how is everybody?
Hi there.
Yay, okay. Oh, kids, we're coming to the end of my pinch hitting for Homer and Elizabeth. And I simply have to say how very grateful I am to have been given this opportunity to be of service to your amazing spiritual community. It's gotten me out of autopilot and back into more mindful living. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. Monday, I was meditating to open myself to Spirit's inspiration about what I was going to talk about today. When I was reminded of how important it is for me to periodically attempt to reconnect as best I can with various significant events recorded in the New Testament. I do this by internalizing and imagining them as best I can as a portal for me to feel what it must have been like to have experienced Jesus personally. And each time I have done this, it ends up reactivating my appreciation and my sense of how he has become such a significant example for me to better embrace and to emulate in my life. So I invite you to join me in these musings while being open to what they may trigger for you. First, I wondered, what would it have been like to have lived in Palestine 2,000 plus years ago? A territory which even then seemed to be in a constant state of flux. I imagine the collective mindset of the people there stemming from the uncertainty that they had lived generation after generation, being conquered, being dispersed, being conquered again, what it must have been like. And I breathe for them now. The more specific area of Palestine I was imagining was Galilee. Situated along the inland sea, obviously because of its climate, it must have been a prized place of real estate, so in my mind's eye, I saw it as hilly and mountainous and comparatively lush. I also imagined numerous little villages dotting the countryside, and as vaguely as I pictured them, I imagined too that each of these communities probably would have consisted of a cluster of very small, basic homes, a central communal well, and of course there would have been a market where goods and gossip would have been exchanged. I can only presume the activities of each day would begin at first light, followed by constant, hard physical work all day long, and the day would truly be over at sunset. To my imagination, the people in these villages would consist mostly of folks who would have been fairly well established in what they were going to do at their birth. Livelihoods would have been handed from father to son, trades being merchants, shepherds, farmers, fishermen, laborers. I imagine too that their worldview was very narrow. Then to my musings, I saw striding onto this scene a man, an itinerant teacher, strapping perhaps, but no doubt strong and fit from all the walking he did, setting a good example for me. Soon. It was easy to speculate that he would have been the subject of lots of gossip shared at the well or in the market. Perhaps what might have been said about him was that he was not always welcome in his travels, because in some circles he was considered to have come from a town of mostly riffraff. Some might have whispered stories that the temple hierarchy was particularly upset with him because he seemed to go out of his way to upset and challenge their status quo. Probably there would have been lots and lots of stories about how he worked miracles when he healed the sick, gave sight to the blind, cleansed the leprous, got the paralyzed to walk, exorcised demons. And I assume that there would have been stories about how he raised the dead. And I also suspect that a few of them would have talked about how he fearlessly shared this message that gave hope to all, not just the privileged few. it's so easy to imagine how he became a magnet to those feeling disenfranchised, to those feeling marginalized, to those thirsting for more, and even to those anticipating a leader who would raise them up to return them and restore to them what they felt was rightfully theirs. I cannot help but see this teacher Jesus as utterly fearless when called to share his message. This message of astounding power, a message that challenged virtually every given in his audience's lives. His challenge to all who heard him was to realize that what they think their life is by no means all of what it actually is. His message calling listeners out to know that there is nothing less than a kingdom waiting to be awakened, to be experienced, and to be expressed within and through each of them. I have no difficulty imagining how his eyes must have shone with confidence, compassion, and conviction. I imagine that only those with the very hardest or the most closed hearts would not have been deeply moved by his presence and his message. So there he was, someone who was just like them, yet he was able to elevate them so much higher than the prevailing expectations of their everyday lives. Through his message, he reached them where they lived. Through his stories of fishermen and farmers, he transformed mundane experiences of everyday life. So here too was a man who demonstrated the extraordinary in the most ordinary circumstances. For the time they were in his presence, no doubt life as it was known was suspended. Individuals felt their own awakenings, got glimpses of more, their hope was rekindled, their way was illumined. I just love thinking of that. So it's not surprising that there developed almost a relentless demand on his time and attention. As impassioned as he was, that must have also been quite depleting. So it's understanding that at times, in order to renew and refresh himself, he simply had to get away from it all by himself. Certainly while in Galilee, this would have been a perfect place to do that. So he could have set out in a small boat to have the solitude he would have no doubt needed, to experience prayerful reflection and personal renewal time. In order to be an authentic messenger, a role model, a clear conduit to show others the possibilities with which they are endowed, his relationship, his connection to his source, his Abba, had to be complete, clear, and deep. He too needed to stay prayed up. Among the very few stories that appear in all four of the Gospels, one such occasion is recorded, and it starts with Jesus returning from just such a respite. I do believe that this story epitomizes what Jesus was and is about, and what living his message still offers us. In fact, I believe that as we look at this story element by element, it serves as a template, a recipe for us on how we too can manifest miracles in our lives. We are told he was seen heading back to land toward an area described as a lonely place. The mere sighting of him must have started the news of his impending arrival to spread far and wide in the countryside. I'll bet that grapevine was pulsing because he is reported to have attracted a huge crowd. In fact, in Mark 34, it says, as he went ashore, he saw a great throng. That would have attracted a lot of attention. Okay, take two. As he went ashore, he saw a great throng, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Oh well, once filled with and utterly in alignment with the present, Jesus did that to which he was called. He was living on purpose. He healed all manner of ills by seeing and affirming the ultimate truth of those who flocked to him. But rather than just fix him, he also taught them how they too could always be in the kingdom of a higher consciousness and thereby manifest their own miracles and live in abundant prosperity. Apparently, all these gathered souls in the thrall of each moment in the presence of this master stayed on as the day passed. Between the four versions, we are told that he healed many and also taught them many things. In Mark 35, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a lonely place, and the day is now over. Send the crowds away to go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus did not live his life in a vacuum any more than we can. He, like us, had people pestering him to deal with the material things that some people find so overridingly important. Even his most trusted followers often slip back into being concerned about what they might be obliged to do. In this version, it sounds like they wanted Jesus to relieve them of the responsibilities of having to deal with, let alone to care for, these tired and hungry people. It seems that perhaps they had temporarily lost sight of that limitless source, which is always attuned and ready to manifest our highest good exactly where we are. Looking closely at the words attributed to the disciples, there were local resources people could have been sent to, although it's not clear just how complicated that would have been given the size of the crowd. But, regardless of there being resources available, and since there was no emergency, Jesus' reply challenged them by saying, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." Can't you just imagine them thinking, what? Us? Us? Are you kidding? It's getting dark. Why us? Well, maybe that would have been my human response. But so it's really, it really isn't all that interesting that in reply to these two human beings, they are alleged to have said to him, "We only have 5 loaves and 2 fish." Whining was not recorded per se. I suspect there might have been a tinge of it in that answer. Jesus, not to be diverted and deferred by their old thinking, and certainly not empowering the appearance of limitations, said to them, "Bring them here to me." He asked to be given what there appeared to be so little of. He was not deterred by the appearance, but rather what he was doing was gratefully taking in hand, appropriating, if you will, the essence of those loaves and fish. He gratefully beheld the symbol of the substance of the loaves and the symbol of the increase in the fish, knowing that they were much, much more than what they appeared to be. However, once again, in order to teach the process of how to manifest limitless prosperity for all concerned, he gratefully took the loaves and fish. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down. This is such an important detail. To be able to receive, one must be in a receptive posture. Be settled down right where one is. The more we quiet ourselves, the easier it is for us to be inclined to look up, to look over and above the appearance of what's before us. Then he personally modeled the next essential step for those who desire prosperity in their lives. And taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, he looked up to heaven. Each time we elevate our thoughts above the material, the physical, this earthly plane, we too tap into the ever-present source of all that is, has been, and will ever be. Before every one of Jesus' most astounding miracles, we are told he did exactly that. Opened his connection with the limitless power of the Creator merely by looking up. Then the next step, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples. Although blessings before meals was a Jewish tradition, Jesus, as always, was not going through the motions here. He was mindfully blessing these symbols because he was invoking good upon them. He was calling forth the action of God in and through them. For this is how we truly bless something or someone. Once we become conscious of the underlying presence of the divine in all things, it is only then that we are in a position to break through the limitations we have placed on them. We must break open our thinking. We must break through limited thinking or judgments, for only then can we step into the way in which the divine will burst forth in amazing results in our lives. You'll notice Jesus didn't say to the disciples where to go or what to do. Peter, you go left, Andrew, you go to the right. No. He gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. Jesus relinquished the outcome to that which is ever greater than we can imagine. And they all appropriated just what they needed. They got more than just food, they were also nourished by Spirit. And speaking of the limitless and amazing abundance of God, in Mark 43 we read, and they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. I recall reading, I think it was in a Bible commentary, how this miracle was referred to as a love feast. What an amazing observation that was. And I suspect many of us have heard or read about this miracle. But somehow framing it as a love feast certainly elevated it for me. So what makes a love feast? Jesus, our elder brother and way shower, to a remarkable extent relinquished any personal desires, wants, or wishes of a material nature so that he could be a fully conscious, loving, and trusting union with God. He is our unconditional, limitless source, and he is urging us to have that same relationship. He asked only that God demonstrate God's grace through him. He wanted only to be of faithful service to his Creator, to his Abba. Jesus showed us time and time again how, when we too consciously surrender to Source, we open the way for the astounding ways in which Spirit can be expressed through us and in our lives. Each time we choose to consciously step into our divine union, we will find that there are no needs, no wants, no desires, just the realization of all that truly is. Jesus repeatedly reminded us to bless, and to bless is to activate a tremendous power. It confers prosperity on that which is blessed. It gives the blessed object a consciousness of abundance, and in so doing, the law is fulfilled. That divine law that shows us that things really do become to us that which we see them as being. So here, friends, is what I see is the recipe for a continuous love feast. And it's available to be encompassing of all experiences. A heart and mind prayed up and filled with conscious awareness of the presence of God. An authentic soul choosing to live on purpose. A grateful heart open to but not limited by appearances. A consciousness continually choosing to look above what appears to be. A continuous heartfelt consciousness that blesses and affirms the presence and power of God always. A courageous soul willing to break through appearances and self-imposed restrictions. A humble heart that trusts that the working of the divine occurs in the right and perfect time and way. One heaping measure of gratitude even before that perfect outworking appears. Mix these all together with love, apply in all situations, be open to surprises, and enjoy thoroughly being one happy and limitlessly prospered child of God. before I hand this off to Tatiana, I would like to again thank you for sharing these last few weeks with me. As a gesture of my gratitude, you may have noticed when you walk in, there were sets of CDs on the coffee table. A few years ago, I recorded these CDs just as CDs were becoming obsolete, so my timing was superb. So anybody who wishes to take a set of them, please feel free to do so, and do know that they go with my gratitude and my love and my highest blessings for each and all of you. So we're going to have a song about love. I'm going to read the chorus or the verse or whatever, and Tatiana is going to regale us. If we only have love. If we only have love, then tomorrow will dawn, and the days of our lives will rise on that morn. If we only have love to embrace without fears, we will kiss with our eyes, we will sleep without tears. If we only have love with our arms open wide, then the young and the old will stand at our side. If we only have love, love that's falling like rain, then the parched desert earth will grow green again. If we only have love for the hymn that we shout, for the song that we sing, then we'll have a way out. Then with nothing at all but the little we are, we have conquered time, all space, the sun, and the stars. Well, at least I didn't pop a pea. There's another verse, right? Yes, okay. If we only have love, we can reach those in pain. We can heal all our wounds. We can use our own names. If we only have love, we can melt all the guns and give the new world to our daughters and sons. If we only have love, then Jerusalem stands, and the death has no shadow. There are no foreign lands. If we only have love, we will never bow down. We'll be as tall as the pines, neither heroes nor clowns. If we only have love, then we'll only be human. For the way that we sing, and we'll drink from the grail to be born once again. And with nothing at all, but with little we are, we'll have conquered all time, all space, the sun, and the stars. Have blessed weeks, my dears. Over to Tatiana.